Mayor, are you hearing anything yet about possible provincial restrictions coming back?
What are you hearing?
There might be a meeting taking place in Edmonton today, but I don't know what.
Meeting was yesterday, I heard.
I just wonder if it has any impact in terms of tomorrow meeting for you guys.
I mean, good question. I did hear the Premier say that he would expect an announcement this week, which means it'll either come today or during our emergency management committee tomorrow. But as is their current pattern, the province is not telling the city anything, so we get to find out at the same moment everyone else finds out.
Now, could that have an impact, or do you think, as we have seen in the past, that if council wants to act, council will do something?
Well, interestingly, a few members of council have been saying that really it is up to the province to do something, which is correct. But I have lost any faith in the ability of the province to do anything. So even if they do it, who knows if they'll do it right? So ultimately, within our limited authority, the city has to act.
So could you do anything more than a mask and bylaw?
There's probably only, there are a few things left in our toolbox. The first is how we treat our 15,000 employees. And indeed, we have already announced that employees must be fully vaccinated or submit to regular rapid testing. We may alter that a little bit, but ultimately, I think that administration is united that people got to get vaccinated if they want to work for the city and figure out how to make that happen. Number two is, of course, the mask bylaw and whether we want to bring that back. And number three is whether we want to impose any kind of vaccine mandate on visitors to city facilities, particularly to recreation facilities. And that is a discussion where I'd be very interested in hearing council's input.
Is that the only place the city would have jurisdiction in terms of making some of these vaccine mandate programs?
I think so. Certainly we can ask that question and whether we have any broad ability to do that under our bylaws in the absence of provincial action. But for now, we certainly have that ability within facilities that we own.
Does the city have any ability to set up anything remotely similar to a vaccine passport, or is it just, do you think it would work on the basis of people showing those tattered pieces of paper?
Well, if anyone needs a screenshot of the app that shows they're vaccinated, I've got one I can share, because although the minister told us to take a screenshot, it seems to be missing one particular piece of data, which is your name. So it's a bit surprising that the minister gave people advice to take a screenshot of something that doesn't have your name on it. So the whole thing is, this is a comedy of errors. And ultimately, you can tell by the frustration in my voice, people are getting sick and dying. And this is not time for amateur hour. So ultimately, I hate that the city has to step in areas of provincial jurisdiction, but if we have to keep people safe, we'll figure it out.
I guess related to that, I mean, technically, the city can't go and create something or a brand new app that people can use, right?
Well, I mean, there are apps in the market, and folks are using them. Many employers are using them, the universities are using them. So ultimately, if we have to adopt something, I suppose we could. It'll cost a lot of money to city taxpayers, but ultimately, if the province has neglected its duty in keeping people safe, what else can we do? So I still remain hopeful that the province will step up to the plate and actually do its job. But if they're not, we can't let people die as a result.
There is a discussion out right now in terms of declaring another local state of emergency, and is that a useful tool for the city at this point?
The one place in which it could be useful right now, so to back up, the state of local emergency really allows us to coordinate activities. We've been doing it anyway because all of the agencies and employers are still working with SEMA. The state of local emergency not that useful. Where the state of local emergency could be useful is in procurement. Because if we need to get an app, for example, that looks like a vaccine passport or mandate, then we can do that and bypass a lot of the procedures and get it done quickly. So if we actually need it for specific reasons like that, we will declare it, but just to generally declare it is probably not that useful.
And is it looking quite, do you think it's likely at this point that after tomorrow's committee meeting, you will be calling a special meeting to actually enact some recommendations?
Yeah, it really depends on what councillors say at the committee meeting tomorrow. So without getting into the weeds, the committee doesn't have the power to make a recommendation, only council can do that. But if committee members are really saying, look, we want to move and we want to move quickly, then I do have the ability to call a special meeting of council for the sole purpose of passing what the committee members said at committees. So it's very likely. Stay tuned.
Any sense of motions yet amongst you and your colleagues that you're hearing about?
Not quite yet. I suspect I'll know a little more this afternoon.
What about vaccination efforts? I know that the city's done a lot already to help with that. Is there any movement on further vaccination, especially in East Calgary?
I had the opportunity. Well, actually, East Calgary has very well. Northeast Calgary has very good vaccination rates right now. East Calgary a little bit less. I did participate in a town hall meeting with Dr. Nenshi and Minister McIver a couple of days ago when we talked about vaccine, and I have to say that I was a little bit disappointed in that they didn't really have any plans for any further vaccine outreach other than in schools, and really said, well, if you have any ideas for places to park the vaccine bus, please contact the Business Council of Alberta and see if you can get the bus. Got to do better than that. And I think one of the big challenges that we've really had is that when the Premier unrolled the Mission Accomplished banner on the aircraft carrier before going on vacation, we had among the highest vaccine rates in the country. Now they are the lowest because people said, I don't have to do it anymore. And the province took its eye off the ball yet again.
Sorry, Business Council of Alberta?
Yes, they're the ones who have the vaccine list. It's been outsourced to them.
So not Alberta Health or AHS?
Yeah.
Okay.
What's your take on what Premier Kenney said last night, that this is now a disease of the unvaccinated?
But the problem is that the unvaccinated are spreading it to the vaccinated. So if he truly believes it's a disease of the unvaccinated, then it is absolutely incumbent on him to isolate the unvaccinated so they don't get the vaccinated sick, and to work hard to get the unvaccinated vaccinated, and he has got neither of those things.
So by that logic, if you're unvaccinated, you, like everyone else, are going to go into a place that's crowded, or maybe a place of business, for example, you should wear a mask.
Absolutely. I mean, regardless of the law, right now, look, the numbers are terrible. Everyone should be wearing a mask in public places. We're back to it. The numbers are awful. So whether or not there is a law, do the right thing for your own safety and for the safety of people around you and wear the mask.
Over the last month or so, you spoke with our 6 p.m. show, and you said, Sue Henry said, not to set your hair on fire just yet. This was earlier on in the months. What kind of conversations have been happening, and what kind of data have you guys been monitoring over the last month, too?
Yeah, so, we have sources of our own. We certainly look at publicly available information on modeling and so on. And it is fair to say that the fourth wave has come on more quickly than most people would have anticipated. There were some people saying it would happen this fast. But the critical thing is we always knew there would be a fourth wave. I've never seen a model that said there wasn't going to be one. It's just we thought that the vaccine rates would be higher, that they wouldn't just have fallen off the cliff. And we thought that it would happen after the kids were back in school. So it would probably happen later in September and in October. So I think the speed of it is probably a couple weeks faster than anyone would have anticipated. The critical thing is we knew it was coming. And I noticed that AHS has even stopped promising that they would release their modeling data that is weeks and weeks late because it doesn't exist. There's only 2 options here. Either it never existed and it was all done on feelings, or it existed but it was so wrong that they're embarrassed to share it. Because it's impossible to say, well, we don't have a narrative of this raw data, because what narrative did you use with cabinet to convince them to do it? Surely you had something to share, or maybe you didn't. And as I said yesterday, when you've been a teacher for as long as I was a teacher, you know when the student is telling the truth when they say they left their assignment on the kitchen counter, and when they never did their assignment.
Was it a mistake to lift the temporary face coverings bylaw when council did, or did it, I don't know, is it okay that you're talking about putting it back in?
No, I mean, we always knew, just like last summer. You remember that Dr. Bardwaj said last summer was recess, that we would get a little break between waves, and people could have a little more freedom. And in that case, the mask bylaw was what allowed for a little more freedom. And the really interesting thing here is when you look at the waves, from the first small wave last spring to the proto wave that we stopped with the face mask bylaw at the end of July, to the third wave and fourth wave, one thing is consistent. As soon as restrictions came in, the numbers dropped significantly. So we know these restrictions work. And in this case, I always thought, I don't know if my colleagues on council thought, but I always thought that if that fourth wave comes and people are not vaccinated enough, we may have to bring it back. But we didn't need it in July, but maybe we need it again now.
Your Worship, why not depoliticize it then and say, when the rates are at this rate, or this number in our community, or this many per 100,000, why not just say, when things reach that level, the mandate's back in force?
You know, it's not a bad idea. Interestingly, it's hard to do that, just legally, because it's a bylaw. And so it's hard to figure out how a bylaw is enforced and not enforced, because a bylaw is either enforced or it isn't. But we could do it the other way around, as Edmonton has done, which is to say, when the numbers hit a certain level downward, then the bylaw is rescinded. So those are the options we're looking at if we look at bringing back the bylaw. All right, thanks everybody.